اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome to ICZ's program for tonight. So today we're going to be starting off with a quick announcement. So we have some important election updates. So the elections will be held electronically due to COVID-19. All members must register. If you haven't registered, you should probably do that soon. So nominate yourself or anyone you think is good for it to be the BOT, part of the BOT. If you have any questions, you can send to this email, ec2021@iczsa.org. And the dates mentioned here, we have candidate nomination is the 30th of January 2021. The issue of the final candidates list is February 6th. And then the announcement of nominees is February 6th, and the election dates are February 20th. Now we will have Quran. Okay, currently for some reason it's not letting me share the Quran. So, Brother Jawad, can you start up with the salam?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, everyone, we will recite a short surah, inshallah. After that, we will do the salam. Salawat ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى. والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى. وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى. وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى. والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى. وللآخرة خير لك من ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم ربنا يا ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم واهدنا إلى الحق وإلى طريق مستقيم ببركة آياتك الكريم واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. خوشنودی قلب متحر مقدس آقا رسول الله ایمه اطهار، مخصوصا خوشنودی قلب متحر مقدس بی فاطمة الزهرا سلام الله علیها بر محمد و اهل بیت محمد صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا محمد بن عبد الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين وابن السيد الوسيين، السلام عليك يا علي بن أبي طالب، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت رسول الله يا قرة عين الرسول يا فاطمة بنت محمد رسول الله. السلام عليك يا سبتي نبي الرحمة الإمام الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة أجمعين. السلام عليك يا أهل بيت النبوة ومهدنا الرسالة، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء يا سلطان يا أبا الحسن، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا إمام الزمان يا شريك القرآن يا إمام الإنس والجان، الأمان الأمان من فتن الزمان، أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهر الله تعالى مخرجك وزهورك. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. جميعا صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت رسول الله يا قرة عين الرسول يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا. هنا توجهنا واستشفانا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجية عند الله. اشفعي لنا عند الله يا وجية عند الله. اشفعي لنا عند الله يا فاطمة. من عقده دلوانه کردم گشتم ولی خبر تو را پیدا نکردم. یا فاطمه من عقده دلوانه کردم گشتم ولی خبر تو را پیدا نکردم. چشم انتظارم مهدی بیاید تا تربتت را پیدا نماید. ای قبر ناپیدای تو شمع دل ما ای با تولایت اجین آب و گل ما تا کی بیادن دلها پریشان تا کی مزارن از دید پنهان. کی گفته تو در دامن صحرا بسوزی در بیت الحزن یکه و تنها بسوزی جایی تو نبود در دشت و صحرا. مظلوم زهرا مظلوم زهرا یا فاطمه من عقده دلبانه کردم گشتم ولی قبر تو را پیدا نکردم. مظلوم زهرا مظلوم زهرا ای قبر تو شمع دل ما ای با تولایت اجین آب و گل ما کلا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين. بر محمد أهل بيت محمد صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين فذلك الذي يدعو اليتيم فذلك الذي يدعو اليتيم ولا يحض على طعام المسكين. مصلين الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون الذين هم يراءون الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون الذين هم يراءون الذين هم يراءون ويمنعون الماعون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Now Maulana Sayyid Asad Jafri will begin his speech.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتحدون، الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا والشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان، ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Our discussion from last night has been revolving around the principles of a successful family. And we are taking those principles from the discussion by Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam in the book called the Misbah al-Sharia, the Lantern of the Path. In that book, the sixth Imam talks about the fact that subservience now goes through 4 different relationships. One of them is how we treat others. And in each of the 4 different relationships, Imam Sadiq includes 7 accompanying principles that must be applied for that specific relationship to, of course, strengthen and be there. And last night we spoke about one of the 7 principles known as generosity, sakhawat, to be sakhi in our families. And generosity does not necessarily always mean to give to the one who asks. In fact, the highest level, the kamal and perfection of generosity inside the family is to give to the one before they ask, meaning to be so in tune with what your family needs, be it your brothers, be it your siblings, be it your parents, be it your spouse, or be it your children. Then we're not going to wait for people to come and ask us what they need. We're going to do our best to approach them before they come and they have to swallow their ego and ask from us what they are looking for. The family unit should be so in tune, so harmonized, to the point where you can pick up the fact that this family member, this wife of mine, the husband of mine, this daughter of mine, this sibling of mine, is in need of something. Something is off. And so before you're waiting for them to come and ask, we have to have that culture inside of our home to be able now to give before they ask. It's easy to give to the one when they ask, but the kamal and perfection is to give without asking. That was all last night. And continuing this principles of a successful family tonight, I want to look at another principle, and that is seeking advice and counsel. Okay? What they refer to as mashfarat in Urdu, right? Now, this is a concept, and this is something that we simply, especially in the South Asian community, we in front of my community, then may think for a moment, or they may insinuate that I'm the one that needs the advice. That means I'm the one that doesn't have control over my own family. So I'd rather see and deal with my difficulties at home with my children, with my spouse, with my parents alone, as opposed to everybody else thinking that I've lost control of my family. And so that shame that I might feel because of the judgment of others is more important to me and more detrimental to me than actually seeking help for those who need help. If you and your child are not on the same page, if you and your spouse are not on the same page, if the family unit now is breaking up into different pieces altogether, then that should take precedence over anything else. And that's why Imam Sadiq says that one of the key principles in a successful family, in a pious family, in a God's centric, and all of it's covered now. This could be your own family unit. Either way, we see it anywhere in the Ahlul Bayt Sira. And then I'll get into the various levels of asking advice, be it from the parent to the child or the child to the parent. Has a beautiful hadith in Nahj al-Balagha where Imam Ali now refers solely according to the stubbornness about them. They refuse to ask for help. They believe that they have everything figured out. They believe that asking for advice is a sign of weakness, a sign of ignorance. I know what to do. I have it figured out. Don't worry. In them. The one now who consults uquliha. Look, you only ask advice from a person that you have respect for, that you see as a source of wisdom, that you see as a source of success. I'm asking you because you've been through this path before. I'm asking you because you have a successful marriage. I'm asking you because you've raised pious children, right? Imam Ali says the one who does that, it's as if his understanding is shared by their understanding. Meaning the wisdom that you think they have, now all of a sudden, you also have that same wisdom. But the one the part that stood out to me was the first portion. If you're going to be not working, on will understand that that this is something that is key. Later on, there is a culture. There's a whole methodology behind either the one asking for the advice or the one being asked for advice. They both have a responsibility. And then we find in the Quran, beautiful verses I find in the Quran. And I ask all of you who are at home right now, if you have a Quran handy, you can use your device, that you open the verse with me. Surah Ali Imran is the 3rd chapter of the Quran, verse number 159. This is that verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now is instructing the Holy Prophet, is guiding the Holy Prophet, I should say, in dealing with the people of Mecca. Keep in mind now, those of you who have read the history of the Holy Prophet, and I encourage my youth especially, read the life and the mission of the Holy Prophet from when he was 40 until the end of his life. If you have to only read one portion of his life, naturally read that portion. Although everything else before that is very, very interesting. What he accomplished in 2.5 decades, the Holy Prophet, is not accomplished. It's nothing short of a miracle. It takes a generation, a century sometimes, to do what he did. He took a chaotic Jahil era and flipped it on its head. The way the Arabs pre-Islam now lived is very well documented. There was no sense of rhyme or reason why they did what they did. There was no sort of order. There was no sort of wisdom. No, nothing. And along comes a prophet now trying to teach them not only to believe in God and pray to God, but live a life that is munazzam, that has order, that has design, that has purpose. Do things where you are mindful of what you're doing, be present in the moment. Oh, nothing short of a miracle what the prophet accomplished. And this is one of the verses that gives us a little bit of the tools that the prophet used. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Ali Imran, verse number 159, he tells the Prophet, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ, that it is actually due to the mercy from Allah that you deal with them gently. Don't be harsh. وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ, that had you been stubborn, had you been rough, had you been hard-hearted, they would have left you. Right? They would have dispersed from you. I mean, if you examine the way the deen now had slowly established itself in the peninsula, it is such a moment of reflection for us. Even Allah, in establishing His perfect Sharia, did it in stages. If you look at, for example, the hurumat and the prohibition of alcohol, he didn't start off initially by saying alcohol is haram. No, he took the people slowly because he knew that alcohol was a prominent part of society. And he knew their hearts weren't ready yet for that. So slowly, bit by bit, talking about the negative effects of alcohol, right? The problems that arise when you consume too much alcohol. Right, bit by bit, right? And then in Medina now, a good 13, 14 years after the announcement of Islam now, Allah makes alcohol haram. One of the last discussions, a fiqhi discussion from the Quranic standpoint, is riba, is interest. Right? I mean, there's a whole discussion that one of the last verses of the Quran from Surah Baqarah that was revealed on the Holy Prophet is the verse on riba, on the hurmat of interest, on making interest haram. It wasn't until 21 years into the prophethood. Again, Allah realized that this form of interest now was predominant inside the Arabic culture and the Arabic lifestyle back then. And this verse also tells us that He is instructing the Prophet, go slow with them. Be gentle with them. Be patient with them. If you don't, they'll be gone. Sometimes my heart bleeds for these reverts that come into the deen. They come, excited. They come fighting the truth. They come, re-energized. And if they run into the wrong person or the wrong group inside of the community, now that says, look, make sure you do this and do that and do this, and before you know it, it's overwhelming. It's not the way the deen was supposed to be implemented inside of us as well. If we wish to implement the deen, even if we were born a Muslim, but never lived an Islamic life, we want to implement that slowly. We have to do it meticulously, step by step, inch by inch, and take the seerah of Allah as our source of emulation. Allah says now, فَضَّ غَلِيظَ الْقَبْلَ فَضُّ مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. Be careful now. Don't be too rough with them. Be soft with them. Otherwise, they'll disperse. And then He says, فَعْفُ عَنْهُمْ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ. So forgive them. Look over their faults. Pardon them. Not only pardon them, not only forgive them, وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ, but actually now seek forgiveness for them. Be somebody now who speaks on their behalf when it comes to their forgiveness. This portion of this verse sometimes is used to prove the concept of tawassul, right? The concept of shafa'at, that the Shi'as believe that those who are not Shi'as, that have an immense problem with the concept of tawassul, of calling out to others other than Allah, we use this portion of this verse sometimes as a Quranic dalil that here Allah is telling the Prophet, look, not only do I want you to forgive them, but I want you to be an avenue of forgiveness for them, meaning seek forgiveness from me, being Allah, on their behalf. Allah is saying flat out, you be a wasila, you be a path, you be a bridge between them and me. And then not only that, and this is the part that I want all of you to understand, he says, وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ. And take counsel with them in the affair. Seek their advice. Do mashwar with them. Ask them what they think and what's happening. Once you've done that, now Allah says, فَإِذَا عَزَمْتُمْ فَتَوَكُّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Once you've done that, now seek, trust in Allah. Inna Allah yuhibbul mutawakkilin. Allah loves those who trust Allah, who do tawakkul of Allah, who rely on Allah. Absolutely. It's vital that we understand that this concept of seeking advice is an essential principle in a successful family. Stubbornness will get you nowhere. Thinking you have all the answers will get you nowhere. Now, it's a two-way street. And let me take a moment here to explain this. It's a two-way street. The first avenue is when the children, when the youth, when the youngsters inside the home, they need to understand something very clear, especially those of you who come from immigrant typical families. Okay? Many of you know that I was born and raised in Toronto. I come from a typical immigrant family. My parents are from Karachi, Pakistan. They have migrated in the early 70s here in Toronto, and we've been here since. Well, I was born here. In my household and my upbringing was a typical Pakistani upbringing, whatever that means. And for the longest time, I think what a lot of my youth do today, and I saw my father, marhum, and my mother, as not an avenue of advice and counsel. I would ask random people for advice on my career, on my schooling, on what courses to take, on what major to invest in, all these things. But I never saw my parents as an avenue for advice. Never did. And so I made mistakes. I made blunders in my analysis of what's needed right now, in my schooling, in my choices of friends, in my choices of courses, in my learning habits, many times. And I didn't realize the beauty of what I had under my nose inside of my home until I actually asked for their advice. My father and I used to go to our Thursday nights, every Thursday night at the center. A lot of you ask me, what is it that had made you go to Qom? And I never know how to answer that question, but I do know if I can pinpoint one thing that really brought about the love for the community, it was Thursday night. Thursday night was my most favorite night of the week. It wasn't always like that, but my father was adamant that it doesn't matter what happens on Thursday night. You can have an exam on Friday morning. You're not missing the Du'a Kumil program. You come for 2 hours, right? There's Yasin being read, there's Du'a Kumil being read. And back then, there was Urdu lectures. Now you sit there, even if you don't know the Urdu, there was no iPad in front of me, no snacks in front of me, no coloring books, no games, nothing. I sat there and I looked at the alim for half an hour, 35 minutes. I did my best to kind of pick up words I may remember from home. Afterwards, you break some bread, you have some chai, that amazing masjid chai, and you go home. And for the longest time, he dragged me, kicking and screaming, until I fell in love with Thursday nights. I felt like I could be myself here, like I belonged here. I remember those drives. It was a 12-minute drive from my house to the center, and I remember specifically one night it was just me and my father. And I must have been, in my late teens, early 20s. Stuck in terms of my university path, what school to go to, what major to study, to choose, what does my career path look like? Back then, it was a .com era. Now the IT field was booming, blah, blah, blah. And I decided now to ask my father, because he left a little bit of a window open where he felt like he wanted to talk, right? So sometimes when your parents do that, take full advantage. So I asked my father, I go, Dad, look, I'm about to graduate. So what do you think? And his advice blew me away. His advice blew me away. And I always mention this because I find it to be a shame that we have right now 17, 18-year-old kids in their homes seeking advice from random people who don't care about their success, I'm sorry. And to avoid falling flat on your face, you need to go and invest in that source you have inside of your home, and that is your parents. When I asked my father for advice, he blew me away. His knowledge of the market, his knowledge of the educational field, his knowledge of me, what my weaknesses and my strengths were. In that 12-minute drive, he analyzed everything about me inside and out, and he was bang on. Naturally, he's my father. He's seen me since birth. And not only that, he is obsessed with my success. There's nothing he wouldn't do to help me succeed. He was my biggest cheerleader, as your father and your mother are. They may not express it, but they are the ones who day in and day out are begging Allah to make sure you are successful in this world and the hereafter. Why wouldn't you tap into that resource and ask for advice? Forget the fact of how their English is and how you think that, me, I thought, okay, this man, my father grew up and was raised in Karachi, the streets of Karachi. What does he know about, the West and, this enigma known as the West and, this unknown known as me? And I thought to myself, after a while, I talked myself out of that ignorance. Though you think that you're somebody that needs to be figured out, let's say, for example. The reality is that if your father, like my father, picked up his things and moved across the ocean and settled, let's say, in Pleasanton, California, then he did something, or your parents did something that you and I could never do. Sometimes we won't move to different states in the US, forget across the ocean. So there is a level of forbearance there. There's a level of risk-taking there. There's a level of love there, because you would assume that they did it for us. So now once I realized that this is a source that I have, I kept asking him for every little detail. Hatta even when I wanted to go to the Hawza, I asked him, Dad, what do you think? I asked him way before I actually went. He said, look, I'm not going to stop you. I would advise you to do two things. Get at least your undergrad from any university in the West. That's going to pay dividends later on in your life. And then get married. Take your degree and take your wife and go wherever you want in the world. I did that. Literally 9 months after I got married, my wife and I were in Qom. It was the best advice. Had I arrived in Qom single without a degree, I don't know where I'd be. That degree taught me how to learn. And in that intensive Hawza environment, those skills that I learned in obtaining my degree came in handy. And having somebody beside me during that journey, of course, was huge. My point was that I tapped into that resource way too late, guys. By the time I realized that my father was a resource and we bonded, we became close, he left this world. He was gone in my late 20s. And all I kept thinking to myself was, if only when I was 16, 15, 17, I would talk to him about these things, open up to him, let's say, for example, maybe I wouldn't make the mistakes and make the poor choices that I would make before. Maybe all that could have been avoided had I just tapped into that resource. Now, mind you, a lot of you are looking at me saying, look, I tried that. My dad isn't really receptive of that. And that's where it's important. As a parent now, if your child of 14, 15, 10, 9, 8 is coming to you saying, what do you think about this? Don't close that door. Don't make it impossible. Don't make it like pulling teeth. Don't make them regret that move. Don't talk down. Don't dismiss them either. I don't know. Go ask your mom. I don't know. Why are you asking me for? If you want to cultivate that open door policy, that open relationship that you can come and talk to me about anything, you have to back that up with action. Because when they actually do come and talk to you about something, that door's closed. They you don't even look at them sometimes when you talk to them. Cut them off halfway through the sentence. This is not what we want to do. So on one side, yes, I'm asking my youngsters to look, you have two of your biggest cheerleaders inside of your home. Their pom-poms are ready. to pray for your success and do anything you need for your success. At the same time, to my parents, especially my immigrant parents, and you're not used to it. I know you raise your kids the way you were raised, but maybe let's change the approach a little bit. If your child with himmat now, with a lot of courage now, comes to you and says, Baba, Dad, I have this issue at school, what do I do? Then welcome that. Embrace that. Put everything aside. Give them your undivided attention. Even if you think it's so that is so nominal and so, it's just something that is, so simple. It doesn't matter. For them, it's not simple. You've lived your life. In hindsight now, going back to when you were 15, 16, those issues that you dealt with, which were easy, were child's play. But not when you were actually 15 or 16. When you're in that age, at that age, everything you go through is epic, is monumental, is hashtag worthy. Because the moment now when the roles are reversed now, and that parent comes to the child asking that child for advice, oh, that has an immense amount of impact on that child and where they see themselves in this whole tribe that we call a family. Remember, the moment the child feels like they are an integral part of the tribe at home, the family at home, the group at home, that's what you want to accomplish. That is a beautiful accomplishment by any parent, to make them feel like, you know what, you are an important piece of this tribe, an important member of this family. Now we can say that, but what's better than showing it? And how do you show it? There's several ways to show it. One of them is ask them for their advice. And I tell you small, simple things. Like what? For example, if you're confused about what to eat for dinner, ask your 8-year-old. Ask your little 9-year-old. What do you want to eat for dinner? Let's say, for example, I want tacos. Okay, we're going to have a taco night, guys. Someone grab the shells, someone grab the sour cream, someone begin the ground beef and the keema. Let's get going, blah, blah, blah. And the entire family, 5 of you, 4 of you, 6 of you, sit there, and with that crunch of the taco shell, you have a taco night dinner. And your 9-year-old is glowing. Why? Everyone at the table is having tacos because of me. If you want to have a board game night, a game night with the family, again, ask your 6-year-old, what do you want to play? I want to play charades. Let's do it. The whole family's playing charades. He is bouncing up and down. Somebody took my advice. Somebody asked me, what do you want to do? And as the child gets older, and this is where Imam Sadiq's alayhi salatu wasalam, 7 hadith comes in, that third portion of the 7, when the child's 14 to 21, when now he says that he is your wazir in the family. He can advise you, not the other way around. The child now is able to advise the parents. Does that mean that the parent stops? No, of course not. The mother and the father will always be the mother or the father. Even when you become grandparents, you can't stop, raising your kids. I'm the father of 3. My mother still tells me to go and say salam to Falan and, do this. And, somebody passed away, make sure you call them for condolences. Yeah, Mom, I know. She still does that. And mashallah, she's the grandmother of 3 of my kids. But it's very wise of Imam Sadiq. He's saying, even if you think your 15-year-old is a child, and this is one of the biggest problems we have inside of our homes, is our parents think that 15-year-old is nothing. He's a child. Bacha hai, Malana, what does he know? Well, what does she know? Imam Sadiq is saying, no. Befriend him, put him beside you. What to have to dinner, or what to have for dinner, or what to play for a board game. Those are small things. When you make life-changing decisions at the family level, moving a home, for example, going for Hajj, for example, going on vacation, for example, possibly moving to a different country, and you and your spouse have this conversation, include your 16, 17-year-old in that conversation. And ask them, what do you think? Just the 3 of you and the 4 of you. Make sure the young ones are not part of that meeting. And make it very clear to your teenager that, look, we're including you because now you're older, you're more mature. We expect these things from you now. MashaAllah, you know, your intellect now, you're baligh now, mashallah. Imagine what Allah is announcing to all of you with this system of balugh. Now, the girl is 9 or 10 years old, the boy is 15 years old. Now, Allah says they are a mukallif, they are responsible. They're now going to be held accountable. 10 years old. 10 saal ki bachi hai Malana. She's 10 years old. Allah, in Allah's kingdom, she's a young woman entering that very critical stage in her life, where now Allah says your salat becomes wajib, the hijab becomes wajib. For a boy now, your namaz becomes wajib, the fasting becomes wajib. We think that, 15, he's a kid, doesn't know anything. No. When you actually include your child and you actually now give him that respect or give her that respect by asking them for their advice and then implementing that advice, you send a very beautiful message. That you are an important part of this tribe. I don't always need to dictate to you what to do. Let me hear you tell me, what do you think I should do? And we get this from the seerah of the Holy Prophet. The sign of a beautiful leader, the sign of a strong, confident wali inside the home is one who asks his dependents for their advice. The Holy Prophet in the war of Ahzab, Jang-e Khandak as it's known sometimes. It's that war where the Muslims dug a trench around the camp of the Muslims to deter the enemy from coming close to them. And the suggestion now to dig the trench around the Muslim army and the Muslim camp was done by Salman al-Farsi. And he made that suggestion to the Holy Prophet. There's many things that are beautiful about that moment. First of all, the Prophet of Allah created this approachability inside of his circles that, you know what, I am welcome to all suggestions. This is not a dictatorship. Yes, I'm the Prophet of Allah. Yes, I'm the seal of prophethood. Yes, everything I say now comes from Allah's wahi. Fine. It doesn't mean that I'm not open to suggestions. So the fact that Salman al-Farsi had the himmat and the courage and the confidence to even make a suggestion is a tribute to the leadership of the Holy Prophet. On top of that, the Prophet did what? Implemented his suggestion. The trench was actually dug during the war of Ahzab. Again, showing everybody, this is Salman al-Farsi, a non-Arab, a revert in my deen. But his suggestion is so beautiful that I'm going to implement it. Imagine now how Salman feels that the Prophet now took my advice. The Prophet implemented what I said. His iman becomes strong. His connection with the Prophet becomes strong. If we want to be a strong wali inside the home, if we want the parents now to be strong chiefs of our tribe, then we must make it so that it is an open door policy, an approachability that resembles the Ahlul Bayt. Otherwise, my way or the highway, this governing with the iron fist, I'm sorry, wo zamana guzar gaya, that zamana is gone now. My father used to tell me that, him and his father were only taught on an as-needed basis, and not in a cruel way. It just wasn't there. There wasn't a cultivation there. There was this immense respect that almost equaled fear back then of your father. And while that respect has to be there, communication also is there. I'm not suggesting to be disrespectful at all, never. But what I am saying is there's power to the idea of advice. So it goes both ways inside of a home. Equally inside of a marriage, it's important that spouses now bounce ideas off each other. It's important that the husband makes the wife feel that, listen, you have a lot to add to this family. It's not just you just simply listen to everything I say, no, but you have to create that mahal and that environment and that culture inside of the home. Then what do you think we should do? Now, what I want to discuss now a little bit is that, the benefits of asking for advice, and of course, the etiquette of when somebody comes to you for advice. Because right now it's been a domestic discussion. Okay, but what is important is that we share our wealth with each other. There are members inside of, let's say, the ICZ community. There are families now, mashallah, who have got it together. They're a great family, a close-knit family. There's cohesion, there's harmony, there's love and respect, there's compassion and mercy inside that household. These two have raised amazing children. Put the ego aside. If you're struggling to raise pious kids, reach out to them and say, can I know what you did with your child? How did you handle discipline? How did you handle limits and boundaries? How did you balance the authority with giving them their freedom? How did you make them love worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Give me some tips, right? So first of all, when you do that, you're sending a couple of messages. Number one is that, remember, the ultimate goal is that you want to protect the ones you love and give them all of the tools now to succeed in a daunting environment. Put aside the shame culture. Nowadays, I think it's actually quite the opposite. If you want to pretend like you have everything under control, and you want that because you want people to respect you, what's even more worthy of respect is when you actually reach out to people looking to perfect your family. In the process, you're sending a beautiful message to your family that I will not, I will go through anything, jump through any hoop to make sure that the family has the right tools. If that means that I go to somebody and say, look, I need your help, one dad to one dad, one mom to one mom, what do I do here? My daughter won't wear hijab, for example. I can't for the life of me get my kids to pray salat, namaz. What did you do? And secondly is that it humbles you. It makes you realize that this is a village approach. To raise children in this era is not the job of one parent. If you are a single parent, my salams and respect to you. But if you have the luxury, and it's a luxury to have both parents there, both parents have to be invested and active and present in the tarbiyat and the upbringing of that child. It can't be on one person. You can't say, oh, well, I work 9 to 5, Mwana. Now she can do everything else. No, Baba, it doesn't work like that. This era is different. Everything from the schooling, to the social media, to the consumerism, to the streaming, to the devices, everything now, it has to be a village approach. I remember one time my mom had come and stayed with us for a couple of days. And, it was during a school week, and she watched one time. My wife and I now spend time with our kids. I was with one child doing their homework, and she was with another child doing their homework. I think an hour and a half passed, and we were both equally invested into both. And she's looking at us like, I don't remember you. And, I have one kid in grade 2, one kid's in grade 7, and she's like, they're so young. I said, yeah, Mom, this is how it is. She said, I don't remember you guys ever getting homework. Forget me sitting there and doing the homework with you, or your dad helping you. I said, yeah, that's different now. It's a different zamana now. Not only that, it takes a community sometimes to raise children. So reaching out to somebody saying, look, what did you do with your 9-year-old? What did you do with your 15-year-old? That's not an announcement that I failed as a parent. In fact, it's quite commendable. Not only that, it builds bridges in our communities. It harmonizes families together. We end up now we end up now cultivating new relationships. On top of that, the fourth thing that is beneficial when you actually ask for advice from others is that it broadens your horizon. It opens up your eyes to a different worldview. You're now given advice about things that you never thought even existed so far. And, this is all, of course, natural. We kind of see the world in our own sort of, limited vision until we go and we actually converse with others. And they have a completely different approach. And all of a sudden now my view now widens. That can't be a negative thing. Broadening your horizon now and expanding your world of view, and all these things only happen when we talk to others, we ask advice from others, we see what they did, and we see, does that fit into my system or not? Because sometimes it doesn't, right? So I ask any of my parents out there, if you're struggling right now inside of your homes with control of your family, with the culture and the identity and the God-centric nature of your family, put the shame aside, put the ego aside, ask for help. Seek advice of those around, especially those parents that you think have it together. Another point I want to make here is that when we do actually now, ask another family, they're bound to say, look, we've gone through our problems as well. So now all of a sudden you feel like, you know what, I'm not the only one. And you'll soon realize that everyone goes through pretty much the same problems with their kids. And so what that does is that it makes what you're going through a little bit bearable. Otherwise, you think the whole world has things figured out except for me. Look at this parent, right? This parent is doing crafts every day with my kids. If I can keep my kid alive that one day, oh my God, I've done something good. They ate 3 times and they're sleeping now. Ooh, that's good. That's a good day. This person is building the shrine of Imam Hussein and the Ark of Noah. And wait a second now. I can barely get my kid to finish his rice on his plate. But when you actually open up that door of communication, you'll see they go through their other struggles. So everyone goes through their struggles. Now, that is for those who actually seek advice. What about when your approach for advice? Is there etiquette there? Yes, there is. Absolutely there is. The first thing is that empathize with them. They're coming to you, and it takes a lot for someone to pick up the phone and reach out and say, look, I need help with my 17-year-old. What am I doing wrong? That means they're going through something, right? And right away, when you utter the words of empathy right away, hey, look, I've been there. It's very difficult. You're doing a great job. I've seen you at the center. I know you and your family. You and your wife, you and your husband are doing everything you possibly can. And by the way, you have beautiful kids. It's not easy. Don't worry. Don't beat yourself up over it. You're a great father. You're a great mother. And those words right away drop the wall and now create a comfort zone between the one who's asking you for advice and you yourself. That softness. Again, I go back to that verse. Right? If that softness isn't there, لَنْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ, they would have been gone. You don't want to ever create an atmosphere now where a person is asking you for advice, and now you basically you confirm all of their apprehensions and say, you know what, it was wrong of me to call you. I knew it was a mistake. I'm never going to call anybody again. How you initially now embrace that phone call of a person looking for your advice is very key. Empathize, empathy, sympathy, say words of encouragement. Let them know, look, you can do this. This is a season of life. Your kid is going through something right now. Just be there beside them. Don't worry. In a couple of years, that season will change to something else. Don't worry. This is all temporary. Secondly, is you are only to give advice when you're asked. I don't know why some people have this sickness of giving unsolicited advice to everyone that they meet. Baba, no one asked you, man. Nobody asked you for your advice. Yeah, if you're calling and say, look, I need help, that's fine, but don't volunteer sometimes. There are people, mashallah, who have a lot to share, right? And they think that, look, what worked for them will work for the entire world, right? One big prescription for the whole world. Trust me, this is exactly what you do. Next time they do this, say this. Next time they do that, take this away. Wait a second now. It's not a cookie cutter system here. Tell them what you did. Tell them this might work, but I don't know. Every child is different. And that's where it's important that as a parent now, we understand the intricate dimensions of every child that we have at home. Every single one of your children are different. We have to understand, as a gardener now, with our flower bed, and each of our flowers are different. What flower needs how much water? Which flower needs this much air and sun? Which flower needs that much indoor, outdoor, by the window, against the window, everyday water, once a week water? We have to understand that. A failed parent does what? Raises all the children the exact same way. No, Baba, every child is different. And so when you are giving advice, remind them of that look, this worked for me, but my kid is different from your kid. My child isn't the same as your child. Maybe you want to try this, but you have to read your children. And that's why one of the most important things when it comes to advice is to listen. To listen. Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salatu wasalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, he narrates a hadith of a man who approaches the Holy Prophet. And with this I will, I'll move towards Masa'ib. The man says, Ya Rasulullah, ma'al ilm. What is knowledge? The Prophet says, the first thing the Prophet says is knowledge is insat, silence. Thumma ma', he says, what else is knowledge? This is one of my favorite traditions, I tell you. We can recite an entire majlis on this one hadith. So please listen very carefully. I'm talking to myself up here. Thumma ma' ya Rasulullah, what else is knowledge? He says, after silence, after insat, he says istima'. Knowledge is to listen very carefully. Thumma ma', he says, what else is knowledge? He says, al-hifz, to retain what you've learned, what you've heard. So insat, istima', hifz, silence, listening very carefully, retaining what you've heard. Thumma ma' ya Rasulullah, what else? He says, amalun bih. Now you act on what you've retained. Look at the beautiful journey of knowledge. If you want to know anything about anyone or anything, this is how you need to take that journey. Finally, he says, the final level, thumma ma' ya Rasulullah, he says, nashr. Then he says, spread that knowledge. But only after you were quiet and you listened very attentively, then you retain what you listened to, then you acted on what you retained, then you have the right to spread. People like me, we get a little bit of knowledge and we spread. We have no idea, where the knowledge comes. We have ourselves even implemented it, but we're spreading. If we want to understand, the details of our child, and it's very important that we do, then sometimes we have to listen to our child. When they're speaking, silence. When they're talking, don't cut them off. When they're telling us about a rough day they had, don't dismiss that. Oh, you're being over dramatic, get over it, not a big deal. Really? Come on. Those are dismissive tones. And then we'll say, if there's ever any issue, you can come to me, beta. I'm here for you. Nobody will love you the way that your dad and your mom love you. But I went to you yesterday and you dismissed me. Silence. Listen very carefully. Retaining. Acting and then spreading. When we identify the capacity and the dharfiyat and the limitations of every child, then whatever advice that we are giving or getting, we'll be able to apply properly. My sisters and my brothers in Iman, these are very difficult times that we live in. Trying to uphold and trying to raise a God-centric family is not easy. But alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, we have 250 years of infallible seerah. From the moment that the Prophet left Mecca for Medina in that famous migration to the moment that our Imam went into Ghaibat. 2.5 centuries worth. The lives of almost 14 ma'sumeen. And whatever we are going through right now, the Imams have gone through already. And they've left behind a path of salvation and emulation for us. When it comes to our family, there is a series of discussions that the Ahlul Bayt have left behind. These are beautiful principles that need to be applied. And one of them is, don't be afraid to either seek advice and be careful when you give the advice. To my parents out there, create an approachable open door policy for your child. You want them to always feel like everything I need to succeed is in this tribe. And to my children out there, don't underestimate the value of your parents when it comes to advice. Don't assume that because they were born and raised in a different part of the world, they have no idea what you're going through. Remember, they are the two that will bend over backwards for your success. Nobody else can come close to that level of love and that level of obsession with your success. And we get this from the seerah of Sayyidah Fatima. Examine her as a daughter, examine her as a wife or a mother. You see that there is immense beauty in everything that she did. And that's why when you look at the amount of oppression and dhulm that was done to her, it breaks our heart, it angers us. It breaks our heart, it angers us. There's an immense amount of grief. When they arrived at the door of Fatima, this was no ordinary door. This was a door that the Prophet of Allah would stand in front of. Some say for months after the revelation of the verse of Tathir, and would say, Assalamu alayka ya Ahl Bayt al-Nabuwah. This is that door that the angels would ask permission to enter before they would enter. They arrive at that door looking for Amir al-Mu'mineen to legitimize their khilafat. Bang on the door, asking for Ali to come out, asking for Ali to come out. There is no answer, and the one now to answer the door is Fatima. The way that some of the homes were built back then was such that when you would open that first initial door, you would not see inside the home. There would be a little bit of some space, a wall maybe, and then another door. And that second door will get you inside the home. To protect, of course, the non-mahrams inside the home. So now when Fatima was behind that door, behind her was that wall. Why is that important? Because when they realized that the door would not be opened, when they kept making threats that we will burn the house down, they were told that the daughter of Rasulullah is inside this home. The small, beloved grandchildren of your holy prophet is inside their home. Nothing mattered to them. It didn't matter to them. At the peak of their anger and frustration, they had several men, not just one, several men had thrusted the door open to the point where now the door slammed against Fatima and Fatima slammed against the wall, sandwiched between the wall and the door. Now Fatima fell unconscious. They grabbed Amir al-Mu'mineen and went towards the masjid. Bibi Fatima is lying there now. Her ribs are broken. Her Mohsen is shaheed. Fidda, come and help Shahzadi. At that moment now, when Fatima regains consciousness, she doesn't worry about Mohsen in her stomach, doesn't worry about her broken ribs, is not concerned about her injuries. Fidda, Aina Abul Hassan. Where is Abul Hassan? Where is Abul Hassan? He's gone to the masjid. Fatima leaves and goes towards the masjid. Look at the selflessness of Fatima. When she comes back from the masjid now, she goes inside the room. Asma bint Umays now reports that she said to me, Asma, I'm going to my room now. So long as you hear the dhikr of Allah, know that I am still in this world now. The injuries now are overtaking Fatima. At that moment now, Asma can hear the dhikr of Allah coming from Shahzadi's room. But there comes a moment now where the dhikr stops and Asma now listens. It's complete complete silence. And then she calls out, Ya Fatima Zahra, Ya Bint Muhammad. There is no response. She walks in lying there on the ground, lifeless. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. She covers the face of Fatima. When you go see your father, send him my salams. When Amir al-Mu'mineen finds out now that Fatima is no longer in this world, he collapses with grief. He was told by her wasiyat and her will that Ali, I want you to wash my body. Ali, I want you to wrap my body. Ali, I want you to bury my body in the middle of the night. Ali, I don't want everybody at my mayyat. All the mazlumiyat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Shabi Shahadat of Sayyidah Fatima tonight. When a member of the ICZ community passes away, if somebody's wife or mother passes away, right away now the committee comes together. One person now creates a ghusl team and they wash the body. One now prepares the graveyard for the burial. One now gets the alim ready for the mayyat. But nowhere is the husband involved or the kids involved. The committee says, go, you can go and mourn with your children. Don't need to look after this. This is too difficult already. We will look after everything for you. But my Muslim Amir al-Mu'mineen washing the body of his own wife now from inside the ghusl khana. Salman al-Farsi hears this shriek of Amir al-Mu'mineen, this cry of Ali. Afterwards he asked, Abu Zar is there? Salman is there? Mawla, this shriek that you had, this cry that you had from the ghusl khana, if anybody asked me, Hadar Karar, Fatih Khaybar, that would be you. But this shriek, what was it all about? With tears rolling down his face. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, Salman, what do I tell you? I was giving ghusl to Fatima and my hand now reached over her ribs. I never understood that the extent of her injuries was so much to the point where her ribs were completely broke. Fatima Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Zahra. Ya Hussein, Ya Zahra.
Sayyada, Hai Sayyada, Pehlu bhi shikasta hai, Turbat bhi shikasta hai, पहलू भी शिकस्ता है सैयदा, तुर्बत भी शिकस्ता है। क्या हाल ये उम्मत ने ज़हरा का बनाया है, तुर्बत भी शिकस्ता है, पहलू भी शिकस्ता है। खातून कोई हमसे यूं चूर नहीं देखी, ऐसी कोई दुनिया में मज़तूर नहीं देखी। 18 बरस में ही लगती जो ज़ईफ़ा है, पहलू भी शिकस्ता है सैयदा, तुर्बत भी शिकस्ता है। दरबार में जालिम की ऐसी पजीराई, किस तरह से तू बीबी फिर लौट के घर आई। बालों की सफेदी ने सब हाल सुनाया है, पहलू भी शिकस्ता है सैयदा, तुर्बत भी शिकस्ता है। तू रोती रही घर में हैदर से भी छुप छुप के, इस्मत की तरह दुख भी पर्दे में रहे तेरे, कुछ दर्द तेरे भी बस जानती फिजा है, पहलू भी शिकस्ता है सैयदा, तुर्बत भी शिकस्ता है। दो ऐसे जनाजे हैं तारीकी में जो उठे, बस घर के ही लोगों ने दोनों को दिए कान्हे। एक फातिमा ज़हरा है, इकबाली सकीना है, पहलू भी शिकस्ता है सैयदा, तुर्बत भी शिकस्ता है, पहलू भी शिकस्ता है सैयदा, तुर्बत भी शिकस्ता है। या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन।
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. عنا لا وين يا زهرة، عنا لا وين تتركينا يتامى، عنا لا وين عنا لا وين يا زهرة، عنا لا وين تتركينا يتامى، عنا لا وين يا فاطم، تضيقي الدنيا بينا وتظلمي الدار، يتامى يقلبنا حزين فاقدك على جمار، حزينة مشاعرنا ومهجنا والدمع نار، يا أمنا فكرنا من رحيلك والله محتار، أيتام أيتام والفرحة جمعتنا، أيام أيام والفرقة فجعتنا، عنا لا وين يا زهرة، عنا لا وين تتركينا يتامى، عنا لا وين رحلتي يا زهرة، شحالتي ابنك من رحلتي، جرحتي مشاعر للحسن يوم جرحتي، كتبتين أليف نبلة بوسط جبدة وغرستين، زرعتين شجر همة ومن الحسرة سقيتين، آلام آلام مكتوبة بجبينه، أحلام أحلام ماتت بين يدينا، عنا لا وين يا زهرة، عنا لا وين تتركينا يتامى، عنا لا وين. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. زيارة. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا حبيب الله يا خير خلق الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين ومصير رسول رب العالمين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي وسيدة نساء العالمين، السلام على الحسن المجتبى، السلام على الحسين الشهيد، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأئمة من ولدك علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الحجة القائم المهدي. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان الأمان الأمان. سيدي عجل الله فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وجعلنا الله من أتباعك وأعوانك والمستشهدين بين لوائك. صلى الله وسلم عليكم سادتي وموالي جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. صلوات.